The sky over Konoha tears like silk pulled over a blade. No thunder, no chakra surge, just a pressure drop that makes lungs forget what to do. Shadows lean the wrong way. Dust dances without wind. He is already standing when heads begin to turn. On the stadium's rim, carved faces of dead Hokage hold their painted patience, while a seam opens high above the final match of the Chunin Exams. A brightness lives inside the wound, but it is not sunlight. It is a cold, structured glow, lines and lattices, a geometry that would rather be a cage. A filament drops from that wound. It falls like a single black hair set on fire. Naruto does not decide. His hand goes up and the air hardens around his fingers. Threads unfurl from the skin of his palm, black at a glance, but not. Each strand is a breath of reishi, soul fiber, brittle as glass, soft as smoke. They weave themselves into a net that spans the stadium mouth to mouth, pillar to pillar, needle precise. The filament hits the net and splits into dust that tastes like winter. Stone stops falling. Seats stop cracking. The scream in 20,000 throats halts on the edge of itself. He hears every voice in the stadium and counts them without counting. 19,984. A baby hiccups in the upper tier. Someone's heart stutters, coughs, returns. Two men in a corridor beneath the bleachers whisper greed like a prayer over someone else's purse. 3 villagers far from here are dying for reasons that will never reach the news. Knowledge lands in his mind as if it has always been there, a city already built. Naruto breathes. His chest aches around something that doesn't belong to him and has always belonged to him. Hiruzen Sarutobi, old and iron in his robes, leans forward in the cog box and does not blink. To his right, a pale boy with pale eyes, Neji, draws his breath like a blade. To his left, a sand gourd hums. The Kazekaji's gaze narrows. Orochimaru's smile, worn like a face behind a face, stills with a hunter's interest. The seam in the sky seals itself without sound. The net of reishi dissolves. Naruto's hand drops to his side, trembling once, and then not. "What did you do?" The boy across from him whispers. Dark hair, pale eyes, veins etched by Byakugan. Neji looks both furious and afraid. "I caught it," Naruto says, and hears the wrongness in his own voice. Not sound. Pattern. Flags crackle as a new wind wakes. Shinobi on rooftops shift their weight by reflex, then freeze as something else shivers through the hidden leaf. Chakra lines, those living rivers that braid through bodies and buildings, ring like tuning forks struck by a hammer that belongs to a different song. For a blink, every seal tag in the village lifts its ink from paper. For another blink, it sits back down. In the root compound, beneath rock and old law, 3 masked elders look at one another without moving their heads. "Foreign," one says through cloth. "Older than Kami," says another. "Bound to the boy," says the third, and waking. Above them, Danzo Shimura listens to the silence between the words. He folds his bandaged hand against his chest, thinks about thresholds, thinks about knives. "Cha." On the field, the proctor coughs once and waves. The match resumes, and the exam, like all pageants, pretends nothing happened. Naruto cannot pretend. The air is sticky with attention. What woke inside him is still looking. It is not the 9 tails. He can sense the fox curled hot around his ribs, guarded and offended. But this other thing sits in the spaces between breaths and makes the spaces countable. He touches it with his mind, and it touches back with an old, cold patience that recognizes him the way night recognizes windows. He fights anyway because he is Naruto, and the fight is here. Neji darts. Naruto moves. Every step makes a map. Every strike lands in a ledger. He feels the reishi threads in the world and uses them like handholds, like anchor lines, like a scaffold he didn't know he was climbing. He doesn't overpower Neji. He outnumbers him. Shadow clones split off clean and crisp, and each one drags a thread of reishi taut between them, as if they are loom workers making a pattern in a hurry. Gentle Fist meets a lattice of souls and loses patience. Naruto's palm taps the floor, and the floor taps back, and Neji stumbles because the room itself disagrees with his balance. The crowd does not know what they are seeing, only that they are seeing the kind of myth that will grow heavier each time it is told. Then the world remembers its plan. Sand blossoms into knives. Summoned smoke ignites. The Kazakage removes his mask to show another mask beneath it, a snake's smile. The invasion begins, and the choreography of betrayal pours out of hidden doors. On the outer walls, every bird goes quiet. In the avenue of the gates, drums begin. Naruto's body moves again before thought. Reishi threads flower and stitch across the stadium as great slabs of stone twist and lean. A puppet of war with too many joints throws a forest of poisoned needles into the crowd. A wall of thread drinks them and falls in a glittering rain that never touches skin. A sand jonin drives a spear at a child. Naruto is already there, a clone catching steel in his stomach and turning to smoke. Another clone turning that smoke to a net that binds the jonin's knees. The original boy sliding his foot behind the man's ankle, gently, precisely, pushing him away from killing towards sleep. Out, Hiruzen says to his guards, even as Orochimaru turns to him with old grievance burning cold. Evacuate. Protect the children. He is doing the path work. We hold. The old man stands like a tree rooted in a river. The river rises. En route, the elders bow their heads as if listening to the floorboards. Leaf under foreign winter, one says. Danzo closes his eye. Prepare retrieval, he says. If the boy falls, we salt the soil. If he stands, we leash the winter. On the roofs, Sandgord opens like a blossoming grave. Gaara descends inside his own protection, eyes unblinking. Shukaku's laugh rides the wind like a saw. Naruto meets him in mid-air, not with a punch, not with a shout, but with a thread pressed to a screaming seam in Gaara's soul. It is not chakra. It is not seal work learned in class. It is a needle of night that tastes like prayer. He does not rip, he unknots. Sand slumps. Gaara hangs for a fraction and then drops, caught by siblings shouting his name. Shukaku's laugh turns to a hiss, and then to a wordless promise that feels like teeth. Naruto lands and the stadium breathes again. Every life around him gleams in his awareness like dew on wires. He hates it. He loves it. He is terrified of it, and would keep it forever. A breath later, snakes spill from human mouths, and the walls add more doors. He goes to work. He unspools shadow clones not like a flood, but like a hand of cards played perfectly. Each clone takes a single purpose and a thread. One carries people. One cuts lines to falling debris, diverting force into angles that the ground can digest. One kneels with a weeping genin, whose leg does not point correctly, and stitches pain, quiet without touching skin. One stands at the field's heart and pulls thread after thread from nothing, braiding them into a ward that hums like a struck bell. The ward tunes the world. Chakra inside its circle feels heavier, clearer, as if shame and confusion are weights it takes away. Orochimaru watches with a scholar's hunger. Interesting, he murmurs to Hiruzen over the hiss of his own snakes. Your boy has found another river. Not mine, Hiruzen says. The leaf's. The leaf doesn't grow metal trees, Orochimaru says. The leaf doesn't grow anything that stands that straight. They move. They fight. And in a corner of the invasion, in a place that will matter more than it looks, a man with a felt glove etched in fine silver raises his hand against a clone, and the thread in that clone snaps with a sound that only Naruto can hear. Naruto hears it. He has time to think one word that is not his, and is his. Sternritter? No, not his language. But the glove is wrong. Not chakra. Not sealing metal. He feels a draw, a thirst, like someone else is drinking out of the cup he didn't know he was holding. The man vanishes into the smoke. Naruto is too busy to follow. By the time the wall trumpets die and the first wave of the invasion breaks against the stubborn rock of Konoha and the stubborn hearts inside it, the stadium has become a triage garden and a prison, a quiet island in a battle that never learned how to end. Naruto stands in the center, with threads sticking to his fingers like sugar. Hiruzen comes to him with ash in his hair and blood blooming on his sleeve. The old man's eyes are hard and gentle both. You saved them, Hiruzen says. I didn't save all of them, Naruto says, because he knows exactly how many he did not. The number sits with him like a stone. Nobody does, Hiruzen says. You saved them. And Boo appear like punctuation. One stays behind when the others leave. The porcelain of his mask hides a lot, but not the angle of his body, the tension in his wrists. He smells like steel and incense. His voice is soft. Come, he says to Naruto. Not quite a request. Not quite an order. Hiruzen nods. War Council. Naruto follows, swaying once the floor tilts under a pulse of wrongness. The wrongness is inside him. The wrongness is a rightness from somewhere else. The Hokage's tower is a hive with purpose. Maps unroll. Runners kneel. Names crackle across the room like thrown pebbles. Hiruzen takes counsel and keeps it. When Naruto enters, conversation stutters. A shiver edges the room. Green, hungry, fearful, reverent. Danzo is already there. He stands with the comfortable stillness of a knife laid on a table in reach of a hand. Bandages hide half his face and half his arm. His visible eye is clear. The boy, Danzo says, which is accurate and insulting. Naruto Uzumaki, Hiruzen says, which is accurate and heavy. Danzo lets silence do half the work. He controlled the field, he says. He drew a net over a stadium and saved 2,000 lives in a breath. He also interfered with chakra flow across large areas, cut a beast from its Jinchuriki, and tuned a battle to his own ki. Mercy was a tactic. That is new. You make mercy sound like a war crime, Naruto says, because his mouth moves when his blood moves, and his blood is moving. Danzo does not look offended. Mercy is a resource, he says, like food, like steel. It is dispensable and precious at once. Use it wisely, or you starve others to feed your story about yourself. Hiruzen lifts a hand, the smallest gesture, and the room remembers to be careful. Naruto swallows. We win by saving, he says. The words are simple and feel like stone. If you become what you're fighting, you lose. Danzo nods, slow. You are young. You still believe that enemies are just what happens when someone hasn't spoken to them well enough. I believe people can change, Naruto says. I was meant to be a monster, and I'm not. I believe that means something. It does, Danzo says. It means you are an exception built out of good luck and old gods. It means nothing that the world can use at scale. The room shifts its weight between two arguments that are both sharp enough to cut. Enough, Hiruzen says gently, which is how he says the opposite of enough. He sets his palm on the map and it accepts his hand. Orochimaru withdrew at a pace that smelled like a plan. The sand pulled with him the moment the wind shifted. Something else moved under their feet. Jiraiya arrives like a storm that learned to be polite. He bows to Hiruzen with a respect that still looks like laughter, and claps Naruto on the shoulder with an affection that has teeth. "I felt that thing," Jiraiya says, face turned toward Naruto's chest like a cat hearing a mouse behind a wall. "Not the fox. The other one. That net you threw? That was not chakra." "It held," Naruto says. "It did," Jiraiya says, "and it sang wrong. That wrongness might be what saved us today. That wrongness is also a nail that wants to get hammered by whatever made it." An Anbu kneels. His mask looks like a bird that died well. "Report," Hiruzen says. "Unknown operatives," the Anbu says. "Not sand, not sound. One wore a glove of fine silver etching. He cut one of the boys' threads." Naruto's mouth is dry. "I felt that." Jiraiya looks at Danzo. Danzo looks at the floor. Hiruzen closes his eyes a fraction. "We have records," Danzo says slowly, "of a doctrine older than chakra. If you believe the monks, older than wood and water. They called it many names. We called it reishi, when we bothered to call it anything. Most of these records are burned or locked behind doors. I would not open without a priest and a flood." "And yet," Jiraiya says, grin gone, eyes like winter, "our boy holds it in his hand like a kite string." "An invasion," Danzo says. "A power we do not understand. A Jinchuriki who can cut a tailed beast's laugh with a thread of hunger. None of this ends with us asleep in our beds." Hiruzen breathes as if he is counting something only he can see. He opens his eyes and looks at Naruto the way you look at a boy who can lift a mountain. "We will hold council," he says. "We will rest. And then we will move before the next wave decides where we stand." A runner arrives with enough panic disguised as urgency to convince no one. "The fire capital requests audience," the runner says, kneeling so quickly the floor winces. "By sacred writ, the daimyo commands presence." Hiruzen blinks once. "Of whom?" The runner does not look at Naruto because he is a good runner. "Of the savior of Konoha," he says. Danzo's fingers make a small, soft sound against his bandages. Jiraiya's teeth catch the inside of his cheek. Hiruzen's smile is something only two other men in the room can read. "Of course," the Hokage says. "They do not go at once. First they sleep like men who know how to sleep when sleep is a battlefield. The village eats, counts, binds wounds, learns names of the dead. Naruto sits on a rooftop with his legs dangling into air and listens to the new hum inside him. He does not touch the doorknob where the fox lies. He touches the other door, the one with black iron bands and old sigils, and it opens a thumb's width. A voice that is not a voice leans through the crack. "We have been patient," it says without sound. "We have been 1,000 kings. Now we are a boy with orange on his cheeks. He should be afraid. He is, but not enough." He tilts his head as if listening to a friend. "Who are you?" he asks. "A mirror," the voice says. "A map. A table with all the pieces on it. We are peace." "Peace," Naruto says. "By what road?" "The road where no one chooses wrong, because no one is allowed to choose." He closes the door. He sits with the quiet. He does not throw up. He does not cry. He breathes and promises himself out loud, because he is Naruto and words spoken out loud matter to him. "I will not be that," he says. "I will not be that." In the morning, the Anbu arrive with shrine maidens. The maidens look like sunlight that took vows. Their sleeves whisper seals. Their eyes are tired, clever, kind. Jiraiya meets them with a bow and a vulgar joke so gentle it doesn't offend them. Escort, the lead maid says, speaking to the space between Naruto's eyes. Containment. Guidance. We were told to say words you would trust. By who? Naruto asks. By the man who taught you to steal dens, she says to Jiraiya, whose grin says guilty as charged, and by an old woman in red who dreams of you like her last grandson. Tsunaide, Jiraiya says quietly. They leave at dusk because moving at dusk is a habit no army can unlearn. The road to the fire capital runs through rice paddies, through low towns where roofs meet each other like hands, through shrines that look asleep and aren't. Anbu travel like ghosts. Maidens travel like bells. Jiraiya whittles with a knife he could kill a god with and does not. Naruto walks and counts. He cannot stop counting. Each person they pass is a small light in the net he has learned to feel, and each light has a music. He listens to the ugly ones too, the self-justifying and the late-night liars, and he does not harden. He will not become what the voice behind the door wants. They stop at a wayside temple, long enough to wash their faces, and decide not to sleep. A monk with eyebrows like brushstrokes meets them in the courtyard. He wears the cloth of someone who knows too much to be tricked by cloth. You should bind him, the monk tells Jiraiya without preface, pointing his chin at Naruto as if pointing at a storm with a stick. And then you should pray his bindings hold. We should teach him, Jiraiya says, or he'll teach himself, and what he teaches himself will not love us. He is a weapon, the monk says. Weapons do not need to love. People do, Jiraiya says, and smiles without teeth. Naruto listens to two faiths argue, the faith of law and the faith of love. He does not interrupt. He is learning the sizes of words. He is learning what rules weigh when you put them on scales. They leave the temple with the argument still humming in the stones. The road bends into pine. Fog goes to work pretending to be a wall. Birds stop. The Anbu in front raises two fingers, and everyone behind him becomes part of the scenery. Naruto feels it a breath before it arrives, the way a swimmer feels a wave as a push from inside the water. His own threads tremble. Something like him crouches on the road's horizon. Then it is there. He sees himself walking toward himself. He is taller by an insult. His hair is the same, one shade darker for contempt. He wears a headband made from a black cross hung sideways with a leaf cut to fit. His eyes are calm and wrong. The wrongness is depth without bottom. It is a well dug all the way to the grave of the world. Behind him walks an army that doesn't exist yet, but will if he wins. Soldiers made from shadow and structure. Children born in foundries of law. Little brother, the mirror says without moving his head much. His voice sounds like Naruto's voice would sound if it were allowed to stop laughing forever. At last. Jiraiya moves. The Anbu move. The maidens lift their sleeves. Naruto lifts his hand. Who are you? He asks, because names are leashes if you know how to hold them. A success, the mirror says. A possibility realized. A world where we choose once, and then no one else needs to choose after us. The words drop like stones into a pool and do not ripple. No, Naruto says. The mirror tilts his head. No, as in not now, he asks gently. Or no, as in not ever. Because not ever is a luxury people afford themselves when they don't have numbers in their hands. I have numbers, Naruto says. They are not an excuse. The dead don't care about excuses, the mirror says. They care about not being dead. I care about not turning the living into furniture, Naruto says, and opens his hand. Reishi threads answer him. They hum low, like bees at dusk. The mirror opens his hand too, and his threads hum higher, like wires in winter. The first clash is not a clash at all. It is two looms disagreeing. The air between them frays. The fog kneels. The pine needles stand to attention, each one pinned to a line that didn't exist a moment ago. Jiraiya is already singing. Not a tune a mother would choose. A battle chorale with syllables that make the lungs work too hard. The maidens harmonize, and the harmony tastes like ash and honey. Seals rise from their sleeves and float between them, like paper moons. The ANBU cut the edges of the world with knives that know where to go. The mirror tests the borders of a plan and smiles like a carpenter knowing a board will fit. He shifts his weight toward Naruto as if offering a hand to climb out of a ditch. "Take the Almighty," he says softly, speaking a name Naruto doesn't know he knows. "See every move. Fix the world. Wear the weight." Naruto tightens his jaw. The fox wakes in his lungs and snarls like a temple drum. "My turn," Kurama says, and the bars of his cage flex. The reishi threads in Naruto's hand flare gold where the fox's chakra burns against them. Neither likes the other. Both hate losing more. The roar when it comes is not in the road. It is in the pattern of the road. Every line of reishi around them blazes foxfire for a breath. The mirror flinches. It is a tiny thing. It is enough. Naruto steps into himself and through the place where fear would have stood. "Not ever," he says. He cuts the space in front of the mirror with 2 fingers. It is not a slash. It is a seam sewn shut. The mirror's army fades as if it was only a thing he had been too sure of. The mirror himself fades last, looking at Naruto with something like pride, and something like hunger, and something like regret stacked on top of each other in careful order. "Soon," he says as he goes. "When you've counted it, enough graves." Silence bites its lip and falls into a grin of relief. The ANBU shake frost from their shoulders. The maidens lower their hands and hide the tremble. Jiraiya leans on his knife. Naruto stands with his threads tucked back under his skin and his heart beating a beat that counts farther than it should. "What was that?" one of the maidens asks, voice thin with swallow. "A design," Jiraiya says. "A temptation cut into a person. A future that wants to occur." Naruto tastes the copper of fear, and the iron of anger, and the salt of love. "A reminder," he says, "not to lose." They reach the fire capital under banners and bells. The city is built to believe itself. White walls carved with words no one reads out loud. Gatehouses that look like prayers with roofs. Guards in gold that is not ostentation, but policy. The procession that forms around them is a river of bright cloth and careful faces, and in the center of that river, Naruto walks like a stone. The audience hall is a cathedral carved into a palace, or a palace carved into a cathedral. Columns rise like trees that decided not to branch. The floor is a mirror that forgives the feet. The wall behind the dais shows a painting of a fire that never burns out. The man on the dais is not tall. He is not old. He is a man built to be a place where decisions can land and not break the furniture. He speaks without moving his mouth. He speaks with his mouth. He layers both voices so that everyone in the room hears a voice they can trust. "We have heard," says the voice in minds. "We have seen," says the voice in the room. Hiruzen bows. Jiraiya bows like a man who has been here before in another life. The maidens kneel and mean it. Naruto stands an instant longer and then bends because he is not stupid and not proud enough to pretend pride is the same as principle. "Uzumaki Naruto," the daimyo says aloud. "You have something inside you that doesn't belong to this house." "It saved your house," Naruto says, and hates his mouth for saying it. and loves it for the accuracy. The daimyo smiles a small, bemused smile that looks like a blade in a sleeve. That is both true and beside the point, his mind voice says. Beside the point is not where we live. We live, he says aloud, in the consequences. Danzo steps from a shadow of a pillar with the sincerity of a man who keeps his knives oiled. My lord, he says, the boy is a danger. That is settled. If he is to be used, he must be bound. If he is to be bound, he must be owned. The leaf can own him on your behalf until he forgets the difference between us and you. Owned, Naruto repeats, as if testing a new word on his tongue to see if it poisons or nourishes. Guarded, Hiruzen says softly, standing where he can see both of them with equal disappointment. Guided, Jiraiya says with a half smile that holds a plan and a prayer and an apology. The daimyo lifts his hand, and the room quiets like a struck bell finishing its last work. He looks at Naruto, and not at him, at the thing behind his eyes, and the boy behind the thing. Then he reaches into something that might as well be heaven, and takes out 3 pictures. He hangs them side by side in the air, where anyone can see if they were meant to. The first is a leaf street with no ninja at all. Children run. Old men play, go badly, and cheat well. A ramen shop steam signs the air. Naruto is not in it. He is in a mirror somewhere. Ordinary, and unfinished, and alive, and not necessary. The second is a field of dead shinobi, wearing every headband the world has learned to draw. The sky is a lid on a jar. A figure stands at the center, with a staff that is also a spear, and a crown that is also a cross. Peace lies across the field, like a blanket that smothers and sets the world's temperature. Naruto is there, and not there, and everywhere there is a decision that was never made because he made it once, and locked it. The third is a city with its windows open. Guards walk with their spears upright. Priests carry fire. Shinobi stand at gates, and in bedrooms, and in courts. There are laws with teeth, and laws with tears, and they bite and cry on schedule. A boy in an orange jacket stands on a roof with a black cross sewn into his leaf. He looks like someone built to take blows and give orders and apologize when he has to. The daimyo speaks in both voices at once, so everyone can pretend they heard him only once. 3 paths, he says. Choose. Naruto's throat tries to close. He opens it. He thinks in numbers, because numbers are the only way to make this honest. If I walk away, he says, nodding at the first picture, I save myself and damn others. I give the next boy the key to that door. He might be worse. If I take the second, he says, nodding at the crown and the cross, we stop counting. We stop choosing. We make a world that feels like safety, because it can't breathe without permission. He silence rolls the third picture in his head until it shows its seams. If I take the last, he says, I become your dog. Dog, Danzo says. Hound. Wolf. Names for the same work. Hound with his own teeth, Naruto says softly, and a leash tied to a law. He looks at Hiruzen. The old man nods once, as if to say, you do not pay less by pretending the bill is lower. He looks at Jiraiya, who shrugs as if to say, better to build the leash than to be ignorant of it. He looks at the maidens, who look back with eyes that know the old words and want new ones with the same bones. He looks at the daimyo and meets 2 voices at once with his own. I choose the third, he says, high and simple and hard, but not as a hound who bites where he's pointed, as a shepherd who beats wolves and teaches lambs to grow teeth. Mercy is not a weakness. It is a law I will write with you. Danzo smiles with the part of his face that can still remember how. You will die for that, he says, almost kind. Maybe, Naruto says. But people won't die instead of me, because I was afraid to try. The daimyo stands. He steps down from elevation to floor level, like a general stepping onto a bridge. He reaches toward Naruto with an empty hand, and for the first time in the room, everyone watches to see if the boy will flinch. Naruto does not. He gives his headband to the daimyo, because he will not play half games. The daimyo hands it to a priest with hands like burned wood. The priest takes out a cross of black iron that eats light like dark water. He lays it across the leaf sigil, and heat rises without flame. When the iron lifts, the leaf holds a cross inside its center, like a compass needle that has decided to be honest. Then, the priest takes a brush and dips it into a cup of gold that should not flow, and paints a small flame at the corner of the symbol. The flame catches and doesn't consume. The cross lies there and does not beg the flame order. The leaf holds both and refuses the lie that the holding is easy. Sanctioned, the daimyo says, and shackled. On your terms first. On mine forever. Break covenant and be unmade. Keep it and be used. Naruto ties the headband back on. It is heavier by something that has nothing to do with iron. When they set out from the capital, bells follow them like smoke. Jiraiya walks as if the sun has moved 2 degrees closer. The maidens keep pace with a rhythm that says they have a new song to learn. Danzo vanishes into the kind of shadow that has doors. News runs faster than men. In the hidden cloud, Orochimaru smashes a table and laughs. Finally, he says, a leaf dog with teeth I can see. In the hidden mist, a woman with more knives than friends drinks something as bitter as the sea and writes a letter she won't send. In the hidden stone, an old man counts bridges and asks if they will hold. In the hidden sand, a boy with a gourd sits with his siblings and says nothing for a long time, then says, "He touched my monster and did not hate me." It is the first nice sentence he will ever speak about anyone. The Akatsuki rearrange themselves around a new star. A man with a mask with one hole in it looks at a wall of plans and adds a new line in ink that breathes. Claim him or break him, he writes where no one will see. Preferably both. Orochimaru smiles at a silver glove on his table. The glove is studded with runes that do not come from any scroll he has stolen. It drinks the light that touches it and gives nothing back. A man steps out of the shadow behind the glove as if cut from it. He is long in the bone, thin, not quite human, with the not quiteness worn like privilege. His eyes have the emptiness of a sky that forgot it needed stars. He bows the bare minimum that art requires. Kagen Seishiro, Orochimaru says, tasting the name for lies. My chimera. Your partner, the man says. He lifts his hand. A thin white bow grows out of nothing in his grip, pulled from the air as if air were cloth. It is not chakra. It is reishi shaped wrong. The boy feels me, Seishiro says. He will bleed for it. Bleed him, Orochimaru says, and smiles like a man who can smell his own grave and doesn't mind the flowers. Konoha sleeps badly and trains well. Naruto learns to braid chakra and reishi until one stops spitting at the other. The fox sulks and whispers and comes to the fence sometimes to talk like a prisoner who does not admit the fence exists. Jiraiya knocks him on the head with jokes and homework and gives him a thing called a rule of 3 that is not about numbers and is about not trusting one solution to solve everything. The maidens teach him how to hum his threads quiet so people can breathe without hearing their own lungs counted. Hiruzen writes laws with one hand and holds a village with the other. Danzo acquires contingencies the way spiders acquire wings. Technically impossible, and yet there they are. 3 weeks after the audience, Seishiro arrives the way a dusty afternoon becomes a storm without the courtesy of noon. It starts with a cough in the air. Naruto hears it in the threads. A single knot tightens somewhere over the market street. He turns his head and the knot drops like a seed falling. He is there before it lands. It is a needle, almost nothing, just a shape that tells the rest of the world how to behave. It punches through his first thread as if the thread were a rumor. He staggers. Something inside him tears with the clean sound of cloth ripped along the grain. Seishiro steps around the corner like a polite guest at his own ambush. He wears white because white is what you wear when you believe you won already. The glove on his right hand is silver, etched into thorn. He doesn't smile. His face is a thing you would forget if forgetting it were not impossible. Uzumaki Naruto, he says, pronouncing each syllable with the respect a butcher gives a knife. Names are for friends, Naruto says, but cannot help himself. Who are you? Someone who came to fix the math, Seishiro says. You have opened an account you cannot afford. You have drawn on a bank you do not own. We have come to audit. He lifts his hand. The bow grows again out of air and cold logic. Light threads along an invisible string. The arrow is not fire or force. It is the suggestion of a hole. When it flies, Naruto has already thrown a thread to catch it, and his thread fractures into glitter that is not light. The arrow makes a hole in the catching and keeps going. He twists at the last breath, and it shears an inch off his world. Heat blooms in his side. In the ledger that keeps track of him, a line turns red. Clones blossom to fill a corridor of possibility, and Seishiro walks past most of them because most of them were guesses, and he is not guessing. The ones that matter hold him long enough for Naruto to learn. Seishiro is not faster. He is earlier. He is not stronger. He is against. His weapon cuts reishi because it is reishi taught to hate its own reflection. It tastes chakra and sneers. Naruto changes the game. He goes low and hostile and uses the city as a partner. Threads run through doors and under carts and along laundry lines. He pulls, and the world shifts its furniture. Seishiro has to step where he did not mean to. The bow wavers a fraction. An arrow misses a boy and takes an advertisement for apples into history. Jiraiya arrives like a swear word carved into a temple. He splashes ink like a storm of crows, and each stroke is a hand that holds. The maidens form a circle around a place that looks like nothing and is in fact a seam in reality. Their song pushes at the seam, and the seam hums in discomfort. Seishiro's eyes flick, not toward Naruto's chest where the fox rumbles, not toward Jiraiya's ink with its old, patient hunger, but toward the place where Naruto keeps his new threads quiet. He nods. It's the kind of nod that sits calmly next to murder. He opens his other hand. The glove shines. A small pellet drops from between two silver runes. It hits the stone. The sound is small. The effect is not. Reishi, in a city block, screams and locks up like water turned to glass. Naruto feels his threads seize. His clones go out like candles under a wet palm. He is present in a way that makes him wish he were not. The bow lifts. The arrow grows. It speaks in a voice that sounds like Seishiro borrowed his mouth. Obey. Yhwach breathes in Naruto's ear on the inside of his skull. Let me, the old king says. Let me, and we will never bleed this way again. We will never count this high again. We will never have to apologize for loving. Naruto is on his knees, and the world is a glass room with knives on the floor. He could say yes, and the knives would be furniture. No, he says, and the no scrapes his throat. The arrow flies. Jiraiya steps into it and writes a seal with his own blood on air. It hurts to look at. The arrow argues. The seal argues. The arrow wins and loses. It goes through Jiraiya's shoulder and into a wall, and the wall is now a door no one wants to open. Boy! Jiraiya snaps, voice steady, Pain in a box he will open later. Sing. Naruto remembers the temple. He remembers the maidens, teaching him to hum his net quiet. He does the opposite. He hums it loud. He does not try to have it all. He chooses. He picks a frequency that matches the silver glove and hates it on purpose. He sings that hate into law. The glove whines. Seishiro's bow flickers like a bad idea. The maidens' circle tightens. Their leader spits a word that was only ever spoken once before, a long time ago, when the first seal was drawn on the first stone that called itself a house. The circle shines. It throws its light not at Seishiro, not at the bow, but at the pellet that started this small Armageddon. Light recognizes light. The pellet curdles and goes out. Naruto can move again. He does not waste motion. He throws one thread. One. It lands not on Seishiro, but on the bow. It asks a question the bow cannot refuse. What are you when you are not a command? The bow hiccups. The arrow he was making forgets that it had a job. For a breath, a fraction of fractions, Seishiro is a man without a plan in a street full of witnesses. Naruto does not kill him. He tries. He sends a thread to cut the glove from the man's hand, to peel the instrument off the musician. Seishiro is good enough to hate that idea, more than dying. He moves. The glove screams. The street fills with a smell like coins burned on incense. The glove explodes into silver dust that melts in air. Seishiro looks at his hand as if someone has just committed blasphemy against a god he did not have permission to believe in out loud. Then he looks at Naruto with a new thing in his face, interest that feels like weather. This will be harder than we told ourselves, he says. Good. He vanishes horizontally, as if walking into a thin line cut in the day and closing it behind him. The street exhales like a man who lived through a duel he did not know he was having. Jiraiya leans against a wall and examines the arrow hole in his shoulder, as if it is a letter from a lover he can't quite remember. The maidens sit down at the same time, because wisdom taught them that part. Naruto sits too, because his legs aren't listening. Blood leaks light down his side in a way that someone else would find prophetic, and he finds annoying. He wants to laugh. He wants to cry. He does neither. He covers his wound with a hand and hums the threads into stillness until the leak slows. The city counts casualties. The number is small and still too big. Naruto holds each number like a pebble and does not put any of them down. He will not let numbers make him into what the mirror wants. By nightfall, the rumors have already built him a palace and burned it. The savior of Konoha is a foreign god. The savior of Konoha is an Anbu plant. The savior of Konoha eats souls. The savior of Konoha saved us. Hiruzen calls another council. Danzo brings maps of places he shouldn't know about. Jiraiya brings a shoulder that still works, and a scroll with a seal that will kill the person who opens it wrong. The maidens bring a cup and a flame. Naruto brings his new headband, and the piece of him that still thinks ramen tastes like proof that life is good. The room smells like smoke and soap, and the dried blood in a bandage that needs changing. Hiruzen nods at Naruto, as if nodding at a junior officer who has seen more in 2 weeks than some men see in a career, and has not broken in the places that matter. You will go to the capital, Hiruzen says, properly this time, with ceremony. The first was a summons. The second will be a presentation. Danzo's eye glints. A leash, he says. A covenant, Jiraiya says. A blade, the lead maiden says softly, meaning a blade can cut bread and throats. A blade without a hand is just an idea. Naruto raises his hand, because he is a boy who still raises his hand when he wants to speak in a room full of killers. Hiruzen smiles at him in a way that will break hearts in 100 years when songs remember how this ended. Mercy, Naruto says. We make it law. We bind it to practice. I will not work for anyone who measures victory only in bodies. If I am your dog, I bite only what keeps the sheep alive, not what makes the shepherd feel powerful. Danzo opens his mouth. Hiruzen lifts a palm. We write it, the Hokage says. We fail at it. We write it again. We tie the failure to cost. So the child dictates doctrine, Danzo says, and somehow manages to make it sound like an observation rather than a sneer. The child holds a door we cannot close, Hiruzen says without heat. We bargain with the doorkeeper, or we die trying to pretend there is no door. They go. The procession this time is all pageant and no stealth. Konoha shows the world the boy it's betting on. The fire capital receives him with holy theater. Priests carry fire that does not burn. Drummers play patterns that sound like the architecture of law. The daimyo speaks in both voices again and makes 3 pictures out of light and habit. Naruto chooses again out loud, so the choice cannot be stolen and put back in his mouth. After the ceremony, in a room with no windows, the Fire Lord pours tea himself and does not drink it. You made a condition, the daimyo says, and it is unclear whether the question is admiration or threat. I made a promise, Naruto says, to myself, to everyone. Promises, the daimyo says, are chains you make yourself. They are the only chains that work better than iron. Then shackle me, Naruto says, where I tell you. The daimyo laughs once. It is clean and short. Very well, he says. Mercy bound into law. Outside, the city abides. Inside, a boy learns how heavy his own name is. The world answers like a drumline in other places. Mist thinks about assassins and saints. Stone sharpens a chisel. Cloud shows its teeth and its glorious, reckless smile. Sand sits and counts, which is new. The Akatsuki, in their scattering, gather in a mind none of them will admit to, and divide the plan like a loaf. Seishiro reforms a glove out of will and secret and promises it revenge. Orochimaru designs a mouth that can speak to gods and not be eaten by the conversation. Night pours over Konoha with the kind of softness that doesn't belong to war. Naruto sits on the Hokage monument with his heels drumming stone in a rhythm only he knows. The headband on his brow, leaf etched with black cross glowing with a small, stubborn flame, fits like a burden accepted and a future argued with. He looks over the village and all its lights. Each light is a life. Each life is a thread he could pull too hard and break. He thinks of the mirror. He thinks of Seishiro. He thinks of Danzo being right in ways that only become wrong if you worship them. He thinks of Jiraiya cracking a joke so a child could breathe and then bleeding for that breath. The fox turns over in his cage and snorts smoke. The old king behind the door waits. Naruto holds the door with one hand and the bars with the other and refuses both as masters. We're going to do this the stupid way, he tells himself, and smiles like sunrise got lost and found itself in his mouth. The kind way, the hard way. On distant roads and in secret rooms, other men hear his promise in the way the lines of the world change their angle, and they plan accordingly. Some plan knives, some plan prayers, some plan both. On the mountain, the boy's shadow stretches long across the stone faces of men who made different promises in other wars. For a moment, his silhouette wears a halo twofold, a foxfire glow and a black cruciform nimbus. The wind tests him and finds him standing. Far away, in a place that is a place, and also a thought, the quiet king, mirror-made flesh, opens his eyes and sighs. Soon, he says to no one, when you have counted enough graves. Naruto squares his shoulders and refuses to learn how to bow to that voice. The village sleeps badly and wakes willing. The law is written. The leash is tied. The mercy is dangerous and bright. In the nights that follow, some of those lights in the village go out and some go on. He counts both. He burns neither into law unless he must. He learns that must is a smaller word than it pretends, and a sharper sword than it looks. He stands watch. He trains. He argues. He saves. He fails. He writes the failure down like a debt to be paid later, with interest and joy. He does not stop. The city hums with new choir. The world leans. The story keeps. And above it all, the tear in the sky that no one else can see restitches itself every night and opens every dawn, breathing with the boy who caught it once and will not let it fall. A week softens only the edges. The middle stays sharp. Konoha heals by habit. Scaffold, sweep, sew, bury, bow. A new law gets written into clean paper and messy hearts. Mercy codified as practice, not posture. The copy that hangs in the Hokage's tower is short enough to memorize and hard enough to misunderstand. It says who is spared when they drop their weapon and how long that sparing is good for. It says what you owe when you take a life in the name of the village, and to whom. It says the village will pay a price to keep its soul, and that the price will be counted out loud. Danzo reads it once, and smiles in the way a man smiles when he has finished measuring a blade. Words, he says to no one, and begins assembling the kind of contingency that is half prayer, half treason. Naruto trains until the world blurs and then sharpens. He learns to braid what burns and what counts. Chakra and reishi refuse each other like proud dogs at first. He coaxes them into the same harness, binding them where they are most unlike. He learns that a clone made from chakra alone is a shout. A clone woven with reishi is a sentence. He learns the cost of both. Chakra draws down his body. Reishi draws down his breath. Too much of either, and he becomes something that can't laugh. He refuses that. He writes it in his head the way Hiruzen wrote the law. Jiraiya sits on a fence and throws him problems harder than boulders. 3 answers, the old fool says, voiced a grin with weight under it. Always have 3. The first answer you'd give if you were tired. The second answer you'd give if you were scared. The third answer you'd give if you loved them. Them, Naruto pants. The enemy? The villagers, Jiraiya says, which might include the enemy if you do this right. The maidens hum him smoother. They teach him a circle song that oils the gear teeth between his threads and his veins. They slap his hands when he tries to hold too much. One frequency at a time, their leader says, and he hears in her tone the ache of a woman who has sung too many funerals. On the 6th night, a message arrives on paper that feels wrong to touch. It came across distances without a messenger. The kanji are tidy and arrogant. 3 towers, it says. Orochimaru borrows my science to mend your world until it breaks. Below, a map without names. Lines of force sketched in silver that refuses light. 3 points shine like teeth. 1 is in a forest the leaf thinks it owns. 1 is on a river the Fire Lord taxes. 1 is in a place people call empty because it contains only the wrong kind of history. They meet in the tower with smoke in their clothes and urgency disguised as calm. Hiruzen taps each tooth with a finger that has signed too many letters of condolence. Jiraiya whistles without joy. Danzo says nothing and writes something in his head that looks like a list of names he is willing to spend. The maiden's leader traces the silver with a nail that has scars where rings used to sit. Dominion, she says. These are not towers. They are tuning forks. They will pull chakra toward spirit and spirit toward a kind of stillness that calls itself peace. People will stop making mistakes because they will stop deciding altogether. Jiraiya looks at Naruto. Your mirror, he says. Naruto nods. The air tastes like metal when he says the name he won't share. This is his road. Hiruzen draws breath and orders it into plans. We divide, he says. We hit all three. We don't have the men. We have the right ones, Jiraiya says, and grins like a door left open on purpose. Teams form like rain in a sky that has no business raining. Shikamaru Nara arrives with sleep on his face and genius in his pocket. He yawns like a man insulted by the triviality of everything that is not this problem. Sakura Haruno brings books and hands, and the kind of anger that is love dressed for battle. Two Onbyu detach themselves from Shadow and wait as if waiting is the same as choosing. Four maidens accept and do not speak about their chances because speaking is a magic they do not waste. Naruto takes the forest tower. Jiraiya takes the river and a wound that still argues with his shoulder. Hiruzen takes the empty place because old men have an arrangement with the empty. They move before the next confession. Naruto runs, threads humming under his skin like taut wire in winter. Shikamaru keeps pace by thinking lazily and moving perfectly. Sakura matches them because she has declared war on her own limits and is winning. The maidens float without trying. The Onbyu do the opposite, and somehow both approaches make the same kind of silence. The forest is a great green animal sleeping on its paws. The tower that is not a tower hums inside it, a bone singing in a pelt. It looks like two trees braided wrong. Silver lines curl up its trunk like ivy and eat light. Shadow lines, Shikamaru says. Don't touch. They're hungry. I'm hungry, Naruto says. He smiles. It fails to change anything. Plan. Shikamaru draws the tower in 3 lines in the air, points to spaces instead of things. Kill zone here, he says. Run if they make you want to stand still. He looks at Naruto. You try to shut it down. If it tries to shut you down, make a mess. Sakura ties her hair tighter and checks the weight of things that aren't supposed to weigh anything. I'll keep bystanders alive until you're a bystander. And us? One Onbyu asks, head tilting like a curious bird. You're both, Shikamaru says. Congratulations. Naruto steps into the clearing, and the clearing rises to meet him like a stage that wants to be a courtroom. He lays his palm against one of the silver lines, and the line bites. He lets it. He needs the taste to know the recipe. In the bite is a signature. In the signature is Seishiro's smugness and Orochimaru's scholarship in the hands of others, many others, who never got to sign what they built. He hums a counter song. It is not elegant. It is one note thickened until the air in the trees moves like breath. The tower flutters. Its silver ivy shivers and tries to imitate his note, and fails, and weeps metal. Seishiro steps out as if walking through the grain of wood. He looks at the tower, then at Naruto, like a teacher looking at a student solving a problem too fast. You, Seishiro says. Me, Naruto says. They move like two truths crashing. There is no circling. The first arrow Seishiro draws is wrong enough to make Naruto's teeth hurt. It is a hole in what holds him together. He catches it with both hands and bleeds light into it until it calls itself whole and disappears. The second arrow is an apology for the first. It aims not at body or threads, but at the bond between them. It cuts. He feels it like heartbreak. Reishi sluices one way. Chakra sloshes the other. For 2 breaths, he is someone else's math problem, and he hates it. He calls clones, and there are none. He calls the fox, and hears a laugh that is not unkind. Kurama roars, and the roar knocks the tower's hum into a ditch. For a heartbeat, it is easy to breathe. Then Seishiro drops 3 pellets at once, and the reishi in the clearing locks like gears jammed with teeth. Naruto's vision strobes civilians, gathered by curiosity, by worry, by the stupid human need to see danger, and then tell the story. Stand at the tree line. When the tower hiccups under Kurama's affront, a branch comes down like a sentence. A woman with a baby does the math and puts her body where the branch intends to be. Naruto moves. His leg thinks it is stone. He falls and throws one thread like a rope on a ship. It catches the branch and hangs it in a choice. He takes the choice. He lets the branch fall and aims it 2 degrees to the left. And it crushes no one at all, and 2 people's legs instead of their lives. Sakura is already there. Her hands rewrite outcomes with the authority of someone who has decided not to ask permission from chance. The price arrives. Seishiro's third arrow slides into Naruto's side where the first duel left a memory, and memories are doors. It goes through that door and corrupts what it touches. Light leaks. It leaks wrong. His veins shine with a brightness that spins, writing circles where there should be lines. His breath counts him without asking him, and each number hurts. The maidens begin. They sing a chord that feels like being held by a promise you wish were a wall. The sound reaches under the silver ivy and touches the dirt and tells it a story about being earth. The ground remembers. The tower's hum loses its place. Paper seals lift from sleeves and stick where the song tells them to. Jiraiya is not here, but his scribble of a hand is ink on slips they spread like a lattice the size of a garden. It makes a choir where there would have been a solo, and a solo is how boys die. Seishiro's face changes for the first time since he had a face. He frowns. He is beautiful when he frowns. You can see the work. Enough, he says, and draws a thing that looks like an arrow and a rule. Yhwach leans on Naruto's soul like a king leaning on a balcony. Let me, the old voice says again, patient now. Let me see farther than him. Let me take the futures into my hand and make them one. Naruto hurts. He hurts the way people hurt when they have been right too long and the world ignores it. He hurts in places music doesn't reach. He hears the mirror lifting a glass in a room where everything is in order. He says no again. He says it not in anger, but in faith. No, he says, and the word goes backwards into the part of him that would like to be God and ruins the furniture. Seishiro's rule arrow flies. The maidens answer with a circle older than cleverness. They sing a shape over Naruto. The circle closes like a hand. The rule hits it and cracks it. The lead maiden sings louder, and the crack becomes a line that leads somewhere safer. The rule sulks and dies. Hold him, she says between notes. We can't fix this twice. Shikamaru has already put a shadow under the rule's shadow and made it trip on itself. One Anbu loses 2 fingers to a choice he made without time. He does not complain because the fingers are accounted for. The other Anbu steps through Seishiro's momentum and puts a knife where the man's ribs would be if he were built from honest materials. The knife passes through a place that has never met a rib. Seishiro sighs as if insulted by the expectation. Naruto stands. He should not. He does. The thread he throws is thin as a hair and angry as a mother. It touches Seishiro's bow again, not to ask questions this time, but to tell a story. You were a choice, the thread says to the weapon. You were made on a day someone thought they were saving the world. That day is over. You can be a tool tomorrow. The bow twitches. It looks back over its shoulder at its birth. Seishiro feels it and cuts the memory away with contempt so clean it makes the world polite. The bow goes still. This will be costly, Seishiro says, and he means for him and for everyone. It already is, Naruto says. Seishiro smiles without moving his mouth. Good, he says, and steps backward into an angle that isn't there. The tower shivers. It knows it has been seen. It tries to become something else. The maiden's song refuses to change. Naruto lays both hands on silver and hums what he has learned. One frequency, not all of them. One mercy, not every mercy. He sings the tower into a nap it didn't plan, and that is often all the victory anyone gets. The hum dies. The forest breathes. They bury one girl because the branch did not listen to every order they gave. They bind 2 legs. They write down names, and the names will not be just paper. Sakura shakes once when no one is watching, and then puts her hands on a boy's chest and makes ribs remember their job. Shikamaru looks up through the canopy and calculates the angle at which the next 2 towers will echo this one, and hates himself for admiring the design. Naruto bleeds light for a while, and then stops because the circle around him says, "Stop." He thanks the maidens with his hands, because his mouth is busy deciding whether to be sick. The lead maiden nods once, with the respect you give a soldier who learned the hymn fast and didn't sing out of key. They run. The river team is already fighting when they arrive. The water smells like metal and drowned math. Jiraiya has painted the air with ink enough to write a religion. The tower here looks like an argument about boats. Naruto adds his hum to the mess, and the mess agrees to be smaller. The 3rd tower in the empty place meets Hiruzen and remembers a different century. The old man does not win so much as he convenes a meeting between forces that thought they wouldn't have to speak to each other again. It is enough. By dusk, 3 towers are sleeping, and will wake only if a hand worse than Sashiro's comes to their cradles. The price is printed under eyelids. One maiden has no voice left. She will never sing again, and the silence around her is a gift and a grave. Jiraiya's shoulder bleeds in a way that suggests the arrow in it is not done arguing. Hiruzen's breath is short, and not for the first time. Naruto counts the number of people who would have died if he had said yes, and the number of people who did die because he said no, and he puts both numbers on the same page and refuses to draw a line through one of them. The Fire Lord calls him again, not with pageantry this time, but with urgency that smells like rain on a river that is going to flood. Naruto stands in a room without pillars and speaks to a man who is a place again. The law holds, the daimyo says. For now, mercy has teeth, but the price is real. It should be, Naruto says. If it doesn't cost, it's not a choice. Spoken like a saint, Danzo says from the wall, because he cannot die of exhaustion like other men. Saints make good posters and bad endings. Spoken like a coward, Naruto says, and means it without hate, which is worse. Danzo's eye warms by a degree. We will put a key in you, he says to Naruto, as if discussing whether. 3 keys, if that makes the priest happy. If you break covenant, if you become what you are offered on your bad days, we turn you off. Naruto looks at the Fire Lord. The man's face does not change, because it is built not to. Who holds them? Naruto asks. Not me, the daimyo says, to his credit. I do not hold what I must order. Hiruzen, Naruto says. Jiraiya, and her. He nods to the maiden leader, whose hands are empty and whose eyes are full. Danzo says something soft in a language of tactics that is mostly numbers. The Fire Lord says yes out loud where it matters. A seal is drawn, a tripartite covenant that would be beautiful if it were not horrible, and is horrible because it is beautiful. Naruto agrees to it because loving a village means giving it ways to survive you. He sleeps that night in a room that is not his, and the mirror comes without ceremony, sitting on the end of the bed like an older brother after a long war. The quiet king wears a uniform cut from the same cloth as a prayer book and a prison. He examines the new symbol on Naruto's headband and nods. a craftsman admiring a rival's joint. They gave you a leash, and you helped them tie it, the mirror says. I told them where to tie it, Naruto says. There's a difference. The mirror tilts his head. There are worlds where you and I do not argue, he says. In those worlds, children don't drown because their parents feared changing the river. In those worlds, children don't learn to swim, Naruto says, and drown in other ways later when you aren't watching. Watching is my trade, the mirror says. He opens his hand and lets Naruto see what the old king keeps in his sleeve. Futures unspooling like thread, millions of them, all at once and all in order, with the failures shaved off until only grace remains. It is intoxicating. It is wrong. It is neat. Naruto looks away. He looks at the present because it is messy and honest. You don't make peace, he says to the mirror. You make furniture. The mirror stands and for a breath looks tired enough to be forgiven. You will bury people you could have simply edited out of harm, he says, not unkind. You will tell yourself it is holy. It will be pride dressed as humility. I will come when you can no longer bear it. I will be waiting, Naruto says. The mirror's smile is sad, pitying, and certain. He wakes with the taste of iron in his mouth and the names of the dead from the towers in his head, and he walks the village at dawn to keep faith with both. War adapts. Orochimaru retreats into the shell of someone else's plan and recuts it to a blade he can call his own. Seishiro builds smaller things instead of bigger ones. Arrows that echo, knives that hum at the same pitch as a regret. The Akatsuki change their masks and make their ringed hands into a circle with a new space in it. The hidden villages hold councils where maps drink tea and men and women make alliances with their old enemies' stubbornness. Naruto becomes what he promised, a shepherd with his own teeth. He leads missions that end with handcuffs instead of graves, and sometimes pays for it with failures that look like stupidity on paper and feel like correctness in the dark. He refuses to kill a boy with a bomb sewn under his skin and carries him instead, while Sakura cuts the bomb out with a needle made of patience. He pulls a criminal back from a cliff by a single thread, and the man bites him through the wrist for thanks. He counts the bites and calls them part of the law. Danzo brings him a list one night in the tower, a list of names that do not deserve to breathe air others can use better. Remove them, Danzo says, gifting the worst verb like a coin. No, Naruto says. Bring them in. Try them. If they flee, then I hunt. That's the law you signed. Danzo taps the paper with his bandaged fingers. The law I signed because it will make you break later, he says, honest like an old knife. Maybe, Naruto says, but not tonight. Seishiro returns in days, and in rumors, and in small machines that eat light and leave rules behind. The worst arrives under a moon like a bone. It is a codex arrow, a long thought writ thin, shot from nowhere into everywhere. It doesn't hit anyone. It hits the valley of the end, the place where two legends once shook hands with their fists and taught the river how to curse. Stone flinches like flesh. The statues that watch each other across the water turn their heads a fraction, and the valley begins to sing with a tone that says, from now on, spirit first, choice second. Naruto feels it in his threads like ice poured up his arms. The valley is 2 days away if he is a man. He makes it in one if he is the boy who counts and the fox who runs. Jiraiya meets him at dawn with a shoulder that isn't done insulting him and a smile that says both of them know this is a bad idea and are excited anyway. The maidens arrive breathless and ready. 2 Anbu come because one died and everything has a ledger. The Codex arrow sits on the river like an idea no one has the authority to remove. It hums reality toward a narrowness that looks pretty from above and cruel from the ground. Trees next to it begin to stand straighter than they should. Birds refuse to choose left or right. The statue's eyes clear. That is the worst part. Seishiro stands on the water, which is impolite, and does not sink, which is predictable. He folds his hands because it looks better than pointing. "This place will be safe," he says. "You will want that for the world." "I want it to be alive," Naruto says. "They are not mutually exclusive," Seishiro says, and draws a bow made of a decision someone else didn't get to make. The fight is fast because fast is honest. Naruto throws threads and eats arrows and bleeds light and laughs once because laughing keeps him human. Jiraiya writes a word on the surface of the river, and the river agrees to it. The maidens sing, and their leader's voice is not there, and the hole where it should be makes the harmony better, which is just another cruelty. The Codex arrow hums louder. It begins to write itself into the valley's bones. Naruto reaches for it, and his hand passes through because it is not a thing but a grammar. He feels the old king get eager and pushes him back like a door in a storm. "Open your hand," Jiraiya says, between two seals, between two breaths. "Not your fist, your hand." Naruto opens. Not power. Intent. Law. He shows the valley the line he drew in a room with a man who was a place. Mercy as statute, not as charity. Choice as design, not as indulgence. He pulls a thread from himself that is not black and not gold, but the color of promises kept. He lays it across the Codex arrow like a ribbon across a blade. It does not stop. It detours. The Codex hum finds a new minor key. The valley remembers it is a place where friends fought and did not stop loving each other just because they lost. The grammar bends. The arrow becomes a line that the river can step over. The statues breathe out. The trees, confused, remember how to lean toward light. Seishiro watches, and for the second time today, looks less than certain. "You will never win clean," he says. "I will never win alone," Naruto says. Seishiro nods, approving the answer, hating it. "Then we will teach you what alone feels like," he says, and he sends an arrow that doesn't exist toward a maiden who does. One Onbu moves and becomes an example of why memorials matter. The maiden does not die. She lives without a shadow now, which is something few people survive for long. She will. The duel ends not with a kill, but with a boundary. Seishiro steps back into his angle again. His bow does not obey him with the spontaneity it used to, which is something. He inclines his head in that irritating way that makes you admire him. "Harder," he says to Naruto, to himself, to the world. "Every day," Naruto says. They walk the valley until it does not hum wrong. They take back what can be returned and grieve what cannot. Jiraiya draws a new seal on the statue's foot. Very small, a correction made by a student to a master's old mistake. The maidens sing the names of the living for once, and it feels like a trick they got away with. News makes its own weather. The hidden stone hears that the leaf sang a tower to sleep and considers hiring a choir. The hidden mist invents a new knife that cuts vows. The Raikage sends a gift that is just a threat wrapped in silk. Naruto opens it, thanks him, and puts the knife on his shelf to remind himself that friends come in many shapes. The Akatsuki adjust, as men like that always do, and whisper to Seishiro in a language that smells like money and grief. Danzo watches all of it through eyes he acquired honestly, and not, and tests the keys in his pocket. He never uses them. He never has to. Knowing they exist is half his victory. Hiruzen grows tired in ways that are gentle, and then not. He writes letters to students whose hands he can still remember around teacups and kunai. He teaches Naruto how to stand at a funeral without hypocrisy. He does not teach him how to live past the day the inevitable happens. He couldn't, even if he started 50 years ago. When it comes, when Hiruzen meets a battlefield that looks like a man and has the face of his past, Naruto stands far away fighting his own necessary fight and feels a thread snap that he cannot mend. He counts that thread with a reverence that has no room for rage and promises out loud to be worth the man's last lesson. The mirror returns in reflections, in pauses between words, in the moment before Naruto decides and the moment after, when a different Naruto would have been able to make the opposite choice and live with himself. The Quiet King raises an army out of theory and patience. He takes people who crave order and gives it to them through surgery. He promises parents they will outlive their children and is adored for it. He promises rulers their nightmares will become schedules and is invited in. He takes nothing by force. He takes everything by obedience. Naruto meets him only once more in flesh before the campaign that history will remember by 7 names and 7 places and 7 prayers. It is in an alley where the sun fails to fit. The Quiet King wears civilian clothes so perfect they are obscene and sits on a crate as if he has always sat on crates. "You died," Naruto says, "because it feels true." "I became an institution," the mirror says, "which is harder to kill and easier to hate." They speak like tired gods and terrified boys, and their words scratch the brick. "You could save more," the mirror says, "if you let me show you how to take their choices away." "You could be loved," Naruto says, "if you loved anyone." "I love everyone," the mirror says. "That is why I do this." "You love the sound of silence," Naruto says, "because it sounds like obedience from a distance." They leave each other without winning, because winning would break the world or make it too neat. Seishiro breaks first, which means he becomes more dangerous. He builds a weapon that eats oaths. He brings it to a village that stopped calling itself poor because the word had grown too heavy to lift. Naruto intercepts, late by 1 widow. They fight through a street where every door is a promise someone made to someone else and did not keep. Arrows go through those doors with more kindness than people ever manage. Threads hold up houses long enough for children to run. Sakura burns her hands and keeps going. Shikamaru calls 2 moves ahead and acts 1 move behind and makes it look like luck. The maidens hum a prayer with no words because words would be presumptuous. The weapon that eats oaths drinks Naruto's law and burps. He laughs because sometimes if you don't laugh at the stupidity of evil, you will begin to admire its efficiency. He writes the law again in a way that tastes worse. He makes it bureaucratic. He makes it tedious. He makes it like life. The weapon loses interest. "Clever," Seishiro says, not angry, as if watching a child solve a puzzle by chewing on it. "Stubborn," Naruto says, and bleeds on his own shoes again. When the campaign finally breaks open into open war with the Quiet King's optimizers, men and women who carry clipboards and knives in the same pocket, the world holds its breath because this is the test everyone was promised would come. The Fire Lord stands in his palace and remembers 3 pictures. He speaks a 4th into being, a world where warriors are allowed to be kind and administrators are required to be brave. The Akatsuki make their play on the 3rd day and steal from a temple what they require to break a god. Naruto chooses to stop a dam from failing and lets them take the idol that was a person. People curse him and then drink water in the morning and do not die and forget who they cursed because forgetting is one of mercy's evil sisters. He writes it down and keeps it anyway. The end that is not an end arrives in a city that was not built for endings. 7 places catch fire in 7 darks, and 7 songs are sung that don't belong to each other, but rhyme. Naruto fights in 4 of them because that is what threads allow. He refuses to be in 5 because that is what humility demands. He accepts that in the 5th place, a school falls, and that he will hold that day around his throat forever. The Quiet King stands on a parapet and holds the future like a jade bead. It is time to end the experiment, he says, and he means love. Naruto answers with a nod that breaks 3 hearts that were hoping he would lie to them. Not yet, he says, and he means never. They fight in silence because the words have all been said. The mirror opens his hand and lets 10,000 solutions pour out. Naruto opens his and shows one, and the one holds because it isn't neat. It is kind. It frays. It costs. It looks like people helping each other because a law told them they must, and because a boy reminded them they could. The Quiet King yields by deciding not to win. He folds himself into a rumor and drinks his own patience as if thirsty. Soon, he tells the sky, which is a bad habit, when you've counted enough graves. Naruto does not answer because talking to the sky makes you sound like a tyrant if you enjoy it, and a prophet if you don't, and he is trying to be neither. He walks the city. He gives orders. He apologizes. He eats ramen standing up, because sitting feels like indulgence. He stands on the Hokage monument again because it is where anger goes to breathe before it turns into poison. The headband is heavier each time he ties it. The black cross is not a threat anymore. It is a question. The small gold flame is not a boast. It is a wound. He wears both and does not pretend they were easy to earn. When he sleeps that night, he dreams of the valley humming with a grammar that forgives instead of forbids. When he wakes, he goes to work. Across oceans of forest and plains, the world reacts the way worlds do, petty and grand, small and noble. A farmer in rice country sells his plow and buys 2 goats because he's heard there will be peace and wishes to milk it. A child in mist binds a broken fish with string and sets it back in the water because she heard a story about a boy who tied knots in the air and decided knots were good. A man in stone spits and says the leaf will fatten on its own virtue until it cannot run. A woman in sand sharpens a blade and writes a letter that begins, "I saw you save my brother when you could have killed him," and ends without asking for anything. The Akatsuki draw a new circle and argue about which way is up. Orochimaru smiles at an empty chair and says out loud, to no one, "Children grow in interesting directions," and begins making a kindergarten that teaches immortality as a hobby. Seishiro sets his broken glove on a table and promises himself to win without it, which is how men become beautiful and terrible. Danzo oils his contingencies and does not sleep, because sleep would be treachery to the parts of him that keep the village alive in ways it will hate if it learns. The Fire Lord writes the mercy mandate into the way roads are patrolled, and the way prisons are lit, and the way taxes are counted. It is not romantic. It changes lives. It takes years. It will fail in places and be corrected. It is better than nothing and worse than perfect. It is law. And Naruto? He stands in doorways when he can, because doorways are where choices breathe. He comes home bloody and not sorry. He learns to be tired without being cruel. He lets the old king speak sometimes, and then tells him to hush. He lets the fox complain, and then thanks him for exactly the right kind of fury. He buys Sakura tea when her hands won't stop shaking, and listens to Shikamaru call him troublesome, and smiles because he is. He is 14 and then 15. He is a child and then not. He is a boy who counts and a man who refuses to stop. He is, finally, a symbol, which is a dangerous job, but sometimes necessary, like a bridge. There is a night when the stars are particularly arrogant, and he cannot sleep, and he climbs to the place with faces cut into mountain, and sits where the stone noses look over a village of lights. He puts his hand on his headband, and feels the weight and the warmth, and the way they argue against each other. He closes his eyes. Down in the streets, a drunk sings the wrong song. A thief decides to put the purse back. A child cries, and a neighbor, not related by blood, not paid by law, gets up to help. A man holds a knife and thinks of a boy who bled light so a baby could live and puts the knife down. A woman prays to no one in particular and is answered by sleep. A criminal makes a promise and means it. Naruto opens his eyes. The wind moves across his cheeks. The shadow he casts on the stone faces doubles itself. One edge foxfire, one edge cruciform, both edges stubborn as dawn. He breathes. He stands. He goes back to work. The tear in the sky knits itself with him. Each day a stitch, each night a choice. Every morning a small stupid miracle that tastes like steam and broth and the sound of people arguing because they are still here to argue. And far away, in a chapel built out of efficient fear, the quiet king lights a candle and blows it out and lights it again to practice not being angry. In a lab that smells like metal and clever rot, Seishiro writes a letter to a boy he respects, folds it into an arrow, and decides not to shoot it yet. In a palace where decisions sleep with swords, the Fire Lord signs a budget that makes kindness cost less. In a cave with masks on the wall, a man in an orange spiral puts a new line on an old plan and whispers, "We'll see." The world does not end. It refuses to. It lives the way it always has, by being difficult and worth it. The boy who said no to a crown he could have grown inside his chest keeps saying no. The people he loves keep making that possible. The story does not stop. It turns a corner. It finds the next street. It counts the lights again. It keeps